Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the most overpowered ninja build in Nioh 3. Ninja is extremely powerful in this game because of the fast mobility you get. Ninja tools are extremely powerful, as well as the spells and all the different abilities that you get in this game. Being able to move around quickly and avoid attacks while being able to lay down a ton of your own is pretty crazy. And we have really great key damage on this build. I'll be going over all the best equipment, skills to use, and different abilities that we want to be using to get the most out of this for bosses, mobbing, and everything in between. Now for this build, we'll be using Tonfas and our ninja tools, and I would highly recommend using the following setup here, depending on bosses, because certain have different elemental weaknesses, but the Fire Shuriken, which I'll show where to get in a moment, the Infernal Calamity, which is insane against large bosses, leaving behind fire here, which can deal a lot of damage over time, and the Uncanny Bolt. Now, to unlock the Infernal Calamity here, you do have to get to the Way of the Wind Ninja Veteran by doing the battle scrolls when you're at a shrine. And as for the Fire Shuriken, which you can actually get very early on in the game from a handbook, near the very start of the game, the Warring stage, you're actually going to come over to the Hamatatsu Castletown East. You're going to cross the bridge here, and it's right over here. You're going to come up, and it's going to be just right there. So you're actually going to break down some boxes and climb under a cliff. And I would highly recommend having the Fire Shuriken, because if an enemy blocks, you can still deal damage to them because it explodes after a few seconds. And the Uncanny Bubble is another nice one to have alongside. Depending on enemy weaknesses, sometimes you're going to have to swap these around depending on the boss you're going against. Fire ones, likely weak to water, and you can even go ahead with the Glacial Calamity here, which is kind of similar to the Infernal Calamity. I found the fire damage to be a bit better. The breath attacks kind of feel like a waste because your character has to lean up or down to actually hit enemies with it, so I wouldn't use these. And with that, we need a good core of spells to build around as well. This is going to go into our Omnyo box here. Now, you don't need to have a very high stat. We'll get into stats in a moment, but for the Yang positions here, I like to have the Raiju. I think this is one of the best in the game. You can get it very early on, and the Crucible Wrath for it is actually just to the very far, to the very first map on the right-hand side. You're actually just kind of come up right here. I highly recommend doing this, because when you summon it out here, it's going to jump around. It does a big lightning attack there, and then it continually keeps doing lightning damage in this huge area of effects. You can run in and drop that on a boss to slow him down. And this also comes with special effects, increased lightning damage, which is a role you definitely want to have. Now, late game, I also like the Nuribatok here, which is a boss you fight. It basically just hits the enemy a ton of times. It doesn't do any elemental damage, but it's good if you need a bit of distance from a boss or an enemy you're going against, because it can hit many times. The Ibaraki Doji is another good lightning-based Omnyo if you want to be able to apply the slowdown status even easier. And I'm also going to mention Inenra here, which can do fire status, similar to the Raiju in its area of effect, but it's good if you want to apply burn. Now for our Yin position, this one here is extremely important. Daidarabachi has Sloth. If you played previous Nioh games, you'll know this is insanely overpowered. And to get Daidarabachi on the very first map, you're going to come over to the left-hand section over here, and there's a quest. I would highly recommend getting this if you don't have it already, because it significantly slows down bosses, meaning that they are attacking and jumping slowly through the air. You can run around behind them and start doing critical hits at their back. Crazy stuff. I also like to have at least one familiar talisman. These create these little orbs that are going to float around your character, which can damage enemies. And what's great about them is that whenever you do a heavy attack, they're going to release off on the enemy there, and you do a bit of extra damage. I accidentally did a lightning attack there, but yeah, if you're doing your normal heavy attacks and hit an enemy, you can see there the orbs fly off with it, so you can get a bit extra damage that way. And that's from the Kamai Taichi. I like the wind one here, because wind's a little bit harder, like water, to apply on the enemy, but you can find a few of these near the very start of the game. Another one that I think is essential is the Sudama Soul Cord. You can get these really easily. You just go back to your camp and you buy something from Sudama. The lightning or thunderstorm here, it has 8 charges and it hits the enemy twice. Typically a couple castings or 3 castings will have this applied on the enemy. And I find it's a nice disengage tool because you can jump back, cast this, especially with the fast casting skill, which we'll get to. It's just a really easy spell. And another one I think is essential is Lifesteal Talisman. If we're going against a humanoid type boss, this will stop the enemy's ability to recover ki. This is crazy because this means we can break their posture, and this is how you get momentum going in a fight. It means a lot, especially in some of the harder boss fights, like the one that has the Fishman. The second phase of it, that one is brutal, and you want to save resources for the second phase, but this item lets you break his posture twice at the start, which greatly increases the resources and heals you bring into the second phase. And it pairs well with the Sloth, so you basically want to get in, apply Sloth, apply the Lifesteal Talisman, hit them with lightning so they slow down even further, or try to get the burn on them and attack away. Now for a Guardian Spirit, this heavily depends on what kind of playstyle that you like to go with. It's this one here, I like going with lightning damage, so it depends on the skills you have the most of. I typically bounce between Shami Choro here in a later game and Enko. The Enko is going to increase your damage over time, which is really nice because we can also go with poison on this build and fire. So it's great if you're focusing more on fire. If you're focusing more on lightning, this one's going to be a little bit better in my opinion. I like the skills that both of these have. It's something you want to play around with and get the timing down right on it for when to use the skills, but Shami Choro I find to be really strong. with the Y ability having a range attack where it'll do a quick lightning blast. So if you almost have lightning applied to an enemy, you can do that attack pretty easily. I also want to quickly mention Protection Talisman. Some people like using these just to block a bit of extra damage. The Shikigamis are interesting because you can leave them, they're kind of like mines, and the enemy will run over them and take damage. Impurity Transfer Doll can actually be pretty good, so you can use this and remove all your negative effects and apply them onto the enemy. And just the regular old Fire Talisman to put fire damage on your weapons nice, although you can find disposable items or consumables that can do this. Now our level ups and skills. This is going to be dependent. I really do think that going high in our skill stat is important. The reason I'm going with a stat spread here, now Constitution's at 26, Heart is at 21. I found this getting diminishing returns the further you go into some of these stats. Stamina is sitting at 10. I found the equipment, and I'll show you the gear set and talk about the bonuses that it gives. This is going to be heavily dependent on what you find, first of all, but I'll get into gear that we can use later on as well. Skill is where we get our damage from spears, tonfas, and our ninja tools, and our ranged attacks, so this is a really good one. It basically is going to be every single point that we put into this, we're getting damage somewhere in our build. It's very useful to have a lot of skill. 10 intellect is important because this lets us use a lot of items that we normally wouldn't have stats available for, and this is good because this gives us not only higher stamina, armor, and also a lot of stats, which I'll get to in a moment when we cover gear. Magic, I have at least 15 points, 16 depending on what you need for items. I would recommend going through your items and seeing if there's something that may be a little bit better. If you put 1 or 2 points into magic, I would recommend at least 15 points so we can prepare 4 different spells. Now for our common skills, I really think that Awakening is one of the best ones you can get. This is from doing the Omnyo training, and you go to the battle scrolls and get this. Quicker casting is just extremely useful. There is another ultimate one, the Summoning Basics. This is crazy because it doubles the amount of summoning seals that you have. So if you have one that has 2 summons, you can bring them in 4 times, or if there's one that's only a single use, you now have 2. Massive increase in power. It's pretty crazy, but I do think that the mysteries of summon can sometimes work in your favor. This gives a chance, and it seems like it's like a 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 chance for summoning seals to not be used. I had a really lucky fight once where Ibaraki Doji, a 1 use, I actually got to use it 3 times in the fight, so sometimes a little bit better than summoning basics for a much lesser cost, and you can use things like Awakening too for the same amount of cost. Amplification, which will increase the duration of Omnyo magic effect. This is good, especially if you're using like the Fire Talisman to put fire on your weapon. I also like the Volitional Summoning, so this lets us use Guardian Spirits and Guardian Spirit skills while we're moving. This is just nice because we're ninja, we want to be mobile. This matters more in the ninja phase despite being a common skill. I also want to quickly mention Artifact Defense. If you find you're using your living artifact and getting beat up and losing it quickly, this will make it have a less duration, but you can just basically trade hits with the boss, and if you're struggling to get value out of it, this could be a good option. Now for ninja skills, I really like the Evil Dispelling Evade. So the Yokai Realm slows our ki restoration and boosts the enemies. We want these gone as quickly as possible. Evading is going to be a major tool that we're using to do that, so we get our ninja tools back and we clear out the Yokai Realm. This is a good one to have. Patience of the Gods here will give us increased status ailment buildup by 24%, which is pretty effective, especially if you're using like Poison Shuriken, some of the harder ones that if you miss one of them, it's not going to apply it on the boss. I'm also a really big fan of Illusionary Dragon. Increase the amount of damage dealt to an afflicted enemy with a status ailment by 12% when attacking from Shadow Arts Ninjutsu of a different element. So this, again, we're using multiple elements here. We want to get those damage boosts. And the Wrathful Dragon here increases the elemental damage received on an enemy when you land a hit with Ninjutsu. So both of these are further scaling up our elemental damage. And when we have 2 elemental statuses on an enemy at a time, we get Confusion on that enemy, which makes them take 40% more damage, and it can scale up even further. I'm also a fan of like the Backstab Life Siphon here, which if you like to position yourself and use a Sloth Talisman, you can recover health. This can be really good. It doesn't restore a ton of health, but it can be a bite of extra sustain. Snakebite technique to increase damage over time is good as well. That affects poison and burn. Some people like the Yokai Banisher instead of the Evil Dispelling Evade, because this is whenever you use a Performing Miss, you'll remove the realm instead. And for samurai skills, I personally like Defense Mastery. If you whiff one of your skill swaps to counter an enemy's attack, and you're in samurai form, having higher defense when you're getting hit, obviously is good. We're going to be spending most of the time in ninja, so the Yokai Realm Earth here will increase ki recovery speed. Whenever we recover our ki pulses, I found this one to be useful. If you're in that stance, Oppressive Strength to be able to not get staggered when you're doing strong attacks and martials is nice. And Favorable Wind increases the melee damage dealt to enemies with status effects, which again, we do a lot of those as a ninja. For Kodama Blessings, I really like the increased damage dealt after using Elixir. These aren't going to make a massive difference, but it's nice to have some of those points there. Jizo Blessing, putting more damage while you're in the Crucible works great. And Clan Protection, if you really want to get the most power out of it, the Todo is incredible because it gives you an insane amount of extra stamina from this. It's really good. It can make it feel like you're just able to take a lot of hits. Potentially bugged, but Ninja Gauge Charge is also really nice to have. So both of these are very good. This obviously being very powerful. Toyotomi is another good clan if you want to farm and get more Amrita. And also the Show, which will give you a decreased ki consumption from your abilities, can also be good, but I found this good because ninjutsu is something we do often, and health, everyone can use that. And for weapons, now Tonfas are extremely powerful. I like having one that has a scorch damage on. This one ended up being really nice. Dual elements with lightning and fire, which is mostly what this build is going around. It also gives increased damage against scorched enemies and increased ki damage against scorched enemies. Now, the Master Illusion set here is extremely good. So the only reason that I have this Swift Hawk here is just for this Master of Illusion set. So when we have 2 of the pieces here equipped, we get a Ninjutsu Gauge Charge increase. When we have 3, we have Shadow Art damage increases. When we have 4, we have the Spirit Force Charge, which increases our overall backstab damage increased. Number 5, when we have 5 pieces, we get increased elemental damage, which is obviously really good on a build that's heavily focused around that. And finally, 6 pieces gives us a lifesteal on our ninjutsu hit. So if you can find these, I have a varying amount of levels here depending on where you're at in the game. I would highly recommend grabbing these. It's just really good. There are a lot of other sets here, but just getting lifesteal on your ninjutsu is really nice. I also like to grab any type of bow that's going to give you any type of Omnyo ki damage or any type of boost your ki recovery or ki usage. Those work really well. And the reason that I was talking about putting 10 points into our intelligence here is so that we can equip some of these here. A lot of them have a requirement, as you can see, to activate of at least 9 or 10. So this really opens things up. Another thing I do want to mention is looking for the lightning omamaris or any of the like wind, fire elements. Depending on bosses you're going in, some of them will deal pure lightning damage. If you can get this here, which gives 51% resistance, you're taking half less damage by equipping an item that took 2 seconds to put on. I would highly recommend using these. There's a lot of bosses that deal pure elemental damage, so if you're having a trouble with them, just look through here. You may have some that are actually extremely useful. And I like to put my items in this particular setup. So I have the sloth on my left-hand side, so I just pop that, and then I can just hit lightning really easily, and then have the elixirs on the bottom. You can put the elixir on the bottom of both of these, just so you're not caught with swapping between them. You had to press the right bumper, and then press the right or left on the D-pad to swap between these. So I would recommend putting the elixir on the bottom of both if you have trouble. Now, when it comes to combat, we have a lot of mobility-based ability, so that we can get in and out of fights. My recommendation is to drop down the fire there, because you can see it's doing that 31 damage, continually hitting the target, and it's funny because they'll end up sometimes just laying down in it. So that's one of my favorites, and you get it back relatively quickly, so you can keep spamming and doing some insane amounts of damage. As the Infernal Calamity, it's pretty nuts, so highly recommend it if you're dealing with large groups of enemies, because you can just pop that down in its place, and then those that are running through it will end up taking the damage, so you can just get out of your way, continue to throw your ninja tools and other abilities to just, watch out for them. And lightning is going to be another really useful ability that you got there whenever we're getting a lot of enemies going against us here at once. But lightning is good to clear them out, slow them down, and then you can hit away with like things like your fire shuriken if they end up blocking. And then yeah. Here's the benefits of the lifesteal talisman. So I accidentally went into my artifact form here. Having the lifesteal artifact means that the enemy can't restore their ki very well. So you see here, we're actually able to, on this very challenging boss, stick him into the wall here, continually keep wailing away. His ki is getting melted extremely quickly. We got 2 of these grapple attacks off back to back, which is great because the later sections of this boss fight were a huge pain in the rear. So having the ability to use things like that Infernal Calamity on this boss is nice because this boss is large. So the right tool set, having all these different ninjutsus which can do crazy amounts of damage for us, applying the confusion status as well as sloth, so we're going against a slower boss, and you'll be able to easily take down some of the hardest challenging fights in Nioh 3. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Hit the subscribe button below if this was useful, and I hope you guys all have an amazing day.